Good afternoon. We're here for a sad occasion, but also an occasion to celebrate the wonder of Steve Henderson's life and many blessings of it that each of us have experienced in different ways. I want to welcome particularly those of you who have not been at worship at St. John's before. First of all, to say that be here in the way you need to be here. There are some ways for you to take part in the service. You can follow along on the screen. I do hope that you will help us sing one song here at the end of the service. Read the prayers as you're comfortable. But the idea is for this space to be here for you. And of course, we're all here wanting to support Allison and Steve's family and those who are closest to him. We will miss him most profoundly. So let's just take a minute to center ourselves, to quiet all the busyness that's in our minds most days, and to be open to the presence of God's Spirit here with us. Friends, we have gathered to celebrate the life of Steve Henderson. We have come to honor the grief that we naturally feel at our loss of him, and we come to be inspired to live our own lives more fully in the awareness that we too will someday depart this world. In this journey of the soul, we are not alone. We stand on holy ground. The one love is with us. And so we enter into this sacred time confident that we will not be overcome by the valley of shadows. Please join me in prayer. O God, creator of all life, help us to accept death as part of life, trusting in your goodness and great love for every one of us. We feel now the pain of parting with a loved one, but we rejoice that we were privileged to experience life with him. We entrust Steve to you in death, as in life you entrusted him to us. We pray in sincerity and hope. Amen.
I'm a friend of Steve's. I've been a friend of Steve's for quite a few years. I was asked if I could say a few words. If many of you know Steve well, you know that he was a person that had a lot of fun in his life. For all the hardships that he had, he still had a lot of fun in his life, and I want to keep it a little bit light as to what I remember about Steve. I first met Steve when I started at the mine. Steve had been a city boy, worked for an insurance company in Toronto, got tired of the city, decided to move north, got a job with an exploration company for a couple of years, then he went into contracting, finally got into the mine. And I was, in '85, I started in the fall, and he had started in the summer. And I can still remember the first time I saw Steve walk into the shop. He had a real swagger about him. Saying hello to everybody who's coming in, very vocal. Come right up to you, introduce himself. How you doing? Good to meet you. And that was the beginning. From then on, Steve and I had a little bit of an on and off friendship with all our activities with young families, but like everybody who was new in town, it was an exciting time, good job, good company, lots of things to do. This guy had big ideas about what he wanted to do and where he was going to go. But he always had this nagging problem with a knee, and I used to watch him put his knee brace on in the morning when we were getting dressed to go to work. And of course, eventually we found out the knee brace was there for the wrong reason. He was diagnosed with MS, which is going to be an illness that was going to slowly take away his physical abilities for the rest of his life. But Steve being Steve, that wasn't going to slow him down. He still had a lot of ideas, a lot of determination what he was going to do. And over the years, I watched him as he began dealing with insurance companies and dealing with agencies and dealing with service companies and then dealing with the physical challenges of hand controls in his vehicles and wheelchairs and upgrading himself to different wheelchairs. And we really got to know Steve well at this point because he'd jump in his wheelchair, especially the electric ones. First he had a scooter, but he'd come charging up and come into the backyard and he'd just call out, "Anybody home? Is the coffee on? Here I am." So, you know. And one thing that you know Steve, if you wanted an opinion from Steve, he'd give it to you. If you didn't want an opinion from Steve, he's still quite happy to give you an opinion. And I think for some of the people that work with him on different boards, on council and stuff, learned that. But one day he came rolling into the backyard, and I said, "How are you doing, Kay?" I said, "I'm doing good, how are you?" He said, "Well, I got a funny story to tell you." He said, "I took Kayo out for a walk the other day." Kayo's the Labrador. We went up to Penn Lake, and I was throwing sticks out into the water for him. I said, "Oh, good." He said, "One time, though, he brought the stick back, and he didn't bring it to shore, he left it out in the water." So I drove out to get the stick, and as I bent over to get the stick, sure enough, I did a face plant right into the water. So I'm lying there trying to keep my face in the water, calling for Kale. And Kale would, because he wanted to grab his collar so he could pull me out of the water. And Kale would just come over and lick his face and then run away. So Steve's lying there wondering what he's going to do. But fortunately for him, this was in the fall. It was near the end of the camping season. There was an American packing up his van. He was one of the last campers in the campsite. And he happened to see the whole event. So he came running over, got Steve out of the water, got the scooter picked up, got him back in the scooter, and then they got into a nice conversation about where he's been, what he's done, everything else. Thank you very much, shake hands, goodbye, and off they went their own ways. So that was one adventure. Then another day, comes around again, I'm in the backyard, comes around and says, "Hey, Kay, what do you think of this?" And he shows me his hand, great big gash across his hand. And I said, "What happened there?" And I said, "I got into a fight with a propeller of an outboard motor." I said, "How did you do that?" He said, "Well, there's some friends, we're all out at Three Finger Lake, and one of my friends had a boat with a motor on it, and I really wanted to go for a ride. So we got a lawn chair, put it in the middle of the boat, they got me on there, and out we went. We're charging down the lake, and then we started to make a turn, but I couldn't control my body. Instead of leaning out of the turn, I leaned into it, and sure enough, there I go. And my friend tried to grab me, and he came in with me. So two of us were in the water with the boat going around in circles. And one time it's coming around, I had to put my hand up, and the propeller caught his hand. The friend was able to grab the boat and get it under control. And I was saying, "So what was going through your mind while you were getting back in the boat?" And he says, "How long can I tread water?" That's what he said to me. So I said, "Boy, you got horseshoes, you know, where everybody else wants to have them." And he said, yeah. He says, "I have many adventures." And that was right up with another one he told us when he was young lad trying to cut grass with his father's powered lawnmower, and he fell off the back of the lawnmower, and he was hanging on the back when he was driving the lawnmower, and he had to let go of his pants on, he got pulled off. And he had to get up and go and chase after the lawnmower and shut it off. But he had He always had zingers for you whenever you were talking about something that was really difficult. He could always throw something really light into it. And that was the good thing about Steve. And again, over the years, as his illness progressed and he had less and less mobility, that's when I really started spending a lot of time with Steve. Spent a lot of time visiting with him at home. We'd be sitting for hours chatting. We talked about everything under the sun. We talked about politics and horse racing and hospital boards and how they were all related to each other. We talked about world events and what was right and wrong with the world and what's going to happen with our kids and all these good things that everybody worries about. And we even got into silly things like trying to figure out why toenails get a mind of their own when you get old. We had all sorts of theoretical ideas of what causes that. But at the end of the day, he was a lot of fun to be with. He was a very interesting person to talk to. And one time I remember going over talking to him and saying, you know, I really like talking to you because you got more information about what's going on around town. And I said, I just don't know what's going on half the time. He said, oh yeah, not a problem. He says, what I think you got to do is start to pay more attention with what's going on around your life, he said, instead of coming here all the time. So I thought, yeah, nice little zinger there. I'll try and do that, you know. But at the end of the day, he enjoyed conversations. He enjoyed people. And part of the reason he knows so much was he wasn't afraid to call people, talk to people. He had a lot of friends. And one thing we talked about was music. He loved his music. He seemed to know so many musical artists. And of course, he knew all the bands. I'm kind of useless talking about rock bands and stuff. But he knew it all. And he loved to go to concerts. And thankfully, Allison was able to get him out to concerts several times. He really enjoyed the last one with the Eagles down in Minnesota, I think it was. Grand Rapids, okay. He had a really great time. Got to meet the drum manager and strike up a conversation with him and get some paraphernalia from the band. But as we talked about the many things, I said, you know, you're lucky you've got so many people you know. And he said, yeah, you know what, you're right. I got a lot of friends, I know a lot of people. And he said, I actually got it pretty good. And I said, yeah, I think you do have it pretty good. And he said, you know, I've got a few things left I really want to do. And one of them was having a tropical vacation. And sure enough, he did. He did get a tropical vacation. And he started telling me about going in the water again. I thought, oh, him in the water was going to be sharp or something. But I see from the picture was a well-managed, Allison was in control, it was a well-managed event. He managed to get him out in the water. He had to swim in the salt water. But he made use of everything he could to move himself around, even wheelchairs like this. The first time he got his first sit-up electric wheelchair like this, he says, Ken, we got to sit and have a look at this. He said, it doesn't go fast enough. He said, we got to get speed. Because we'd be sitting in the backyard, and after a couple of cups of tea, he'd take off down the road, full bore going down the road, wind blowing through his hair, and yelling, yahoo, all the way down the road until he got home. He loved to make good time with every waking moment that he had, and he did a good job of that. But all I want to say is, he said, my life has been great. I've had a lot of great friends, a lot of great memories. And for us, that's what we got to remember in our short lives. We will have many great memories, and one of them is going to be Steve Henderson. Thank you.
means a lot to Annie and Asia and myself, and I know Steve as well, and we wanted to make sure he had a seat at to be hearing everyone speaking of him and sharing how much they loved him. Looking at the pictures, I really see a lot of joy and in my face. And he was the one person that could really make me smile and bring great things to our days. He could also make me furrow my brow. They seem to just waft away in no time. Steve was a public speaker, not myself, so I haven't had much opportunity for this. But Steve had a great childhood growing up in Toronto. He had his mom and dad, Fred and Gladys, and he had one brother, Ronnie. And they spent lots of time with many family members on both sides, the Goslings and the Hendersons. Almost every weekend would be a trip or a weekend with someone at a cottage, a farm. It was endless, and they were all very close. Steve in his adult life has continued to be the center of that family and that world on both sides, and ensure that he talked to everyone on a frequent basis and would let everyone else know what the rest of the family was doing. And he also had many, many friendships from decades that he kept current and relevant just by picking up the phone and calling and spending hours. And even in the last little while, he was able to rekindle some friendships that he hadn't talked to people in a while, and that was important to him. I met Steve in '83, '84, and actually I was walking up to the bar one night, and he was packing his bags from a place he had lived with another lady. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to the bar if you want to talk." And I think I barely sat down, and Steve was there at my side. And we had a nice evening together and a date the following weekend. And that was it. You know, we were together for life. We married in '86 at this church. This church has been a great part of our lives. We celebrated our kids' baptisms and our marriage. And Annie came in '86 and Asia in '89. And it was just a wonderful time to grow ourselves together and grow as a family. He was diagnosed early in our union with MS. And I can remember he adapted the attitude, oh, whatever, you know. It's the cards I've been dealt, and he had all these little cliches that just didn't seem like a big deal to him. It seemed like a far bigger deal to me, and I was much slower to adapt in accepting this to our lives. But as time went on, it became apparent that we needed to worry less, because as each step we came along the road, we would just deal with whatever came, and it really wasn't as big of a deal, and I learned not to worry. The kids grew up with Dad, mostly in a wheelchair, and for them it was normal. You know, I don't think we ever saw Steve as sick. Perhaps till the last couple of years things would affect him, but we never saw him as sick, just that he didn't walk. Maybe it was our denial or his attitude that just made it seem so easy to deal with. He also became quite involved in many things, joining council. I'm sure there was some issue, and I can't remember, that propelled him into, I'm going to be on the committee that decides what happens in this town. Ross may know, I don't remember, but and from that, it just propelled him. He did Ducks Unlimited for 9 years, and he just had a lot of joy doing that and bringing that party together. He was on council for 6 years and did a run at mayor. And I think the next election, I may just put that sign out on the lawn. I don't know if it's against the law. Someone will inform me. But he did have a really great attitude. He was on a lot of hospital boards, and it brought him a lot, feeling like he could give back and participate, and that his words and actions made a difference was important to him. And along with having MS, I had gone back to school and worked a couple of jobs, and we needed more help just to take on the activities of our daily lives, and with that came many workers into our lives. Many of you are here today and had spent either short amount of times or a great many years. Tammy and Cheryl and Maureen, Judy, each of you became a part of our lives, and I think a very personal and good friend to Steve as well. It's hard to not be inserted into someone's life and not feel a huge part of it. So for that, we were always grateful, and I know he's kept you all close in his heart. Tammy, I'm so glad you made it safe, and everyone else that traveled in these past couple of days. We did a lot of traveling this year. It was really important to Steve. I guess this bucket list that everybody talks about, he developed one for himself. And a year ago today, we were in Jamaica with Frank and Lisa. He may have even been laying in the ocean, which was a goal for him. And along with his 2 personal bartenders, or his new adopted son, Lennox and Roydell, they treated Steve like gold and took good care of us. We did get him into the ocean. We had some amazing times, and he was so thrilled to have been able to go. The other trip he was insistent upon was going out to Annie's. She bought a new house, and I was a little reluctant, thinking it was too much to take on, but he just informed me we're going. So make it happen, and we did, and it was a great time. We got to town, and probably within an hour, Steve had introduced himself to all the neighbors. He went out and said, "This is my daughter and her son-in-law, and this is what they do, and this is how long they've been here." And so he introduced you guys to that. As well as at Annie's wedding we had in London, Ontario at the Delta Armories. We were there for almost a week. Steve became the unofficial doorman and greeted everyone coming into the facility that my daughter's getting married this week. So he was well known around the place. The past few weeks he's been unwell, and he was in Thunder Bay. And I was on my drives back and forth between Marathon and Thunder Bay. I was thinking of many times in our life this action he used to do when I would feel upset or stressed or worried about what tomorrow would bring. He would grab me close, he would hold me, and he would express that everything was going to be all right. He said, "We've got this, Al." And I'd release suddenly lots of pressure, and it really was a gift for me. And knowing time was limited, we awaited the arrival of the kids. Asia was Southeast Asia, and we counted down the hours, hoping she would make it to be at his side. but in the past week, before we went into hospital, he told me he was tired. He felt he'd fought the fight. He didn't want anyone to think he was giving up, and I can't imagine anyone taking that, because he was the strongest guy I know. And as I broke down and started to cry, he pulled me to his chest one more time, and my face to his bare chest. He said again, he hugged and stroked my head, and he said, "Allison, everything's going to be all right." Only this time he said, "You've got this." Steve had a lot of faith in me, and I in him. And I think realizing all the effort he put to pull people close and keep them in our lives, I thought was for companionship for him, but I think it was to make sure there was people around for us, support. And I'm glad we've had our dearest friends with us in this last little while. I just would like to end with Steve developed this new ritual for saying goodbye. I guess his greeting for saying goodbye, and that would be "one love," which is his Jamaica saying, and a fist pump. So just in honor of Steve, if everybody could. One love.
Well, as followers in the way of Jesus, we turn to Scripture sometimes for comfort and reassurance. Please join me in a brief prayer of opening to the words that will be shared. Giver of life, you know and care for all people, whoever we are and whatever our thoughts of you. Speak your word to us and come among us with love to give life to all, today and forever. Amen.
I'd just like to thank Allison and Annie and Asia for giving me this opportunity to do a reading at Steve's service today, and just to say what an extreme honor and a privilege it was to be Steve's friend. It's a reading from Ecclesiastes 3. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the busyness and the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds. Yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and to enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil.
The other reading will be equally familiar. 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul and leads me in right paths for God's name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley, the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Amen. When Ken was speaking, I was remembering a day when Ken and I were visiting, and you mostly all know that Steve was quite a natty dresser. He had some great clothes. But at home, he preferred to lounge au naturel. So Ken and I were over the awkwardness of that, and having a visit when one of his workers came and said, "What are you guys up to?" And Ken said, "We're playing strip poker, Steve lost." I'd forgotten about that. The first time I saw Steve was on the national news. In 1987, there was a show on the National about the booming town of Marathon and the housing issues there. And there was, I remember seeing Steve and Randy in particular, and they were in, I think it's a rec room, there was a lot of paneling around them. And they looked like they were having a good time, there was some party going on. But what I remember is the interviewer said something like, "Well, you know, as a normal guy in town, what would you say about this?" And Steve burst out, "I'm not normal." And this, I knew I was moving here, but I hadn't been here yet. This is a guy I'm going to want to meet. And I did within the first day or two of being here. It was William Stringfellow, lawyer, economist, activist in the 60s and 70s, who said that any biography, every biography, is inherently theological in the sense that it contains already, literally by virtue of the incarnation, the news of the gospel, whether or not anyone discerns it or not. We are, each one of us, parables. The next time that I saw Steve, or the next memory I have of Steve, is sitting in our living room on McFarland Street in 1988. Allison and Andy, Asia wasn't on the scene yet, were there, and Steve was telling us that he was diagnosed with MS. And as Allison said, she was still saying, "Well, you know, they're not really sure." And Steve was saying, "Yeah, I have MS." With this kind of unbelievable courage about it. And so I thought of that quote by Stringfellow, which just means that by virtue of our understanding of Jesus Christ, we, each one of us, carry in our bodies some of the divine spark. And so what we do with our lives, what we do with the divine spark that is within us, is a theological statement. It says something about who and how we know God to be. And so Today, and over the past week, I've been thinking about Steve's life and the parable that his life maybe tells us. And as with parables, we don't always take the same thing from the stories that Jesus told as the other person next to us. But a couple of things really stick out to me. Because I knew Steve only really in the time in which he was, I wouldn't say even suffering from MS, he was living with it. It was just how life was for him. One of the things, first of all, that I noted is that, as Allison said, he accepted it. Not only did he accept it, he became very curious about it. And, you know, memories of sitting in the living room while he was stinging himself with bees, because that was helping his MS at the time. Memories of him investigating it and coming to understand it. And for me, it's a reminder of how we need to pay attention to our lives and to the challenges that come with them in that same kind of curious way that he approached to it. The more visible thing, I think, to most of us in the community is that he found meaning in sharing in the community and working in the community. The number of things that I can remember off the top of my head that he contributed to that we all benefit from now are many. Recycling in this town. I think Steve, and I think it was Sylvie Walton, Steve, who initiated that volunteer organization that started recycling here, and has blossomed into a full program. Bag tags, a lot of people weren't thrilled with that one. But I can tell you, I looked down my street the first week, you had to put a buck sticker on your tag, and there were half the garbage cans. So it was a matter of principle. I'm not putting a buck on that. We recycled instead. And we benefit from that still. And those were some of the things he was involved in, as well as the healthcare commitments that he made here locally, but in the region, and accessibility. Steve's a large part of why anyone who wants to come down to lunch after this service can do so, because there's a lift here. And his presence awakened us and challenged us to think about what it means to be accessible. So finding meaning through giving in the community, and it strikes me as a powerful image today, and at a time when we know many of our organizations are struggling in town because of a lack of volunteers, to see someone like the contributions of someone like Steve as a challenge to each one of us. And of course, the other thing is the great joy that he took in life, and the many ways that he enjoyed and savored life. Almost made it to the Tom Cochrane concert last Saturday. Annie and Gord's wedding, and Allison's already said to you about how he was the ambassador for the event at the front door and met all kinds of people, but he did that wherever he went. You saw the photos of their most recent trip to the Caribbean and how many friends he made there. His capacity for reaching out and taking joy from life are also a parable for us. So we hold our memories of Steve, and one of the ways we honor him is to listen to the theological statement, to the parable of his life, and ask, how can I learn? How can I respond in the world in a different way than I have all the time? Recognizing that my life, too, is a theological statement, is a parable for others. How might I find greater meaning by sharing my life with a community more extravagantly? What joy do I walk past because I feel too busy about something else? Those are the ones that come to me. Maybe there are others for you. Well, there's a poem that I want to read to you. I've read it here before. It's a beautiful poem, though, and I think it really speaks to me about words that Steve might say himself. The poem is by Mary Oliver. She writes, "When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like measles pox When death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity and wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity a possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name as comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life, I was a bride, married to amazement. I was a bridegroom, taking the world in my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened and full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Steve did not just visit this world. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. O great mystery, O holy presence, O one we call love, the golden threads that bind us one to another with all creation. We give you thanks for the life, for the witness of our friend and brother, Steve Henderson. We give thanks for the joy he found in it, both in receiving the grace of this life and in sharing with the world around him that grace and goodness, contributing where he could in ways that benefited many. We give thanks for the joy he found in his relationship as husband and father, father-in-law and grandfather. We give thanks for all the joy he knew. Help us to honor him, O God, by holding what he held precious as precious. And send good companions to those whose hearts are hurting this day, to those who will walk in the valley of shadows in the days ahead. Help us to be good companions to one another in that journey. And help us to never let go of the promise of the life beyond this life, when we as a communion of souls will one day gather. We pray these things in Jesus' name, who taught us to pray together, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, the song that has been in Allison's mind for at least a week or two is one we sing here often. And I want to take a moment to thank Peter for playing with us today and for leading us in this song. Please join us in singing, I Was There to Hear Your Warning Cry.
I was there to hear your warning cry. I'll be there when you are old. I rejoiced the day you were baptized, to see your life unfold.
before I offer a commissioning and a blessing, I want to make sure that everyone knows that you're invited to join us downstairs for a time of fellowship following the service. If anyone does need assistance with the elevator, just look for someone who's from around St. John's and they can give you a hand accessing and using that. Into your hands, O merciful Creator, we commend your child, Steve Henderson. Welcome, we humbly pray, a sheep of your own fold, one blessed in life, and a son of your own creation. Receive him into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of the saints who have crossed into the spirit world already. Amen. Friends, may God bless you and keep you all. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may God look on you with kindness and give you peace. Amen.
Thank you.